The iPhone 17e's launch is imminent, according to Mark Gurman. So here's everything we know about Apple's 2026 budget iPhone, from its display, to its performance, to its battery life, its cameras, and everything else in between. So get a popcorn ready, and let's take a look. And speaking of Apple, this iPhone right here looks amazing with our Playful People Pack by Walrod. I absolutely love these clean designs of everyday moments, especially this skate wallpaper here. And speaking of love, Valentine's is on the way with our new Valentine's Vibes Pack by Splashy, which captures this really cute aesthetic for you and your partner. So check them both out using the links below in our app wallpapers for iOS and Android. First off, we have the design of the iPhone 17e. And if you've ever seen or held a non-Pro iPhone 15, then there you go, you've already seen the 17e. At least if you're looking at them from the front or the sides, they should be identical. The only difference would be on the back, as the 17e is still rumored to only come with a single camera module, but I'll get into that later. So design-wise, you can think of this as a combination of the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 16e. Even the expected colors are said to be the same as last year's 16e, so just black and white. I would have loved to have seen at least one or two fun colors, similar to what Apple is doing with their budget iPads. Maybe blue or yellow to help attract a younger audience, but I don't know, maybe we won't ever see that with the budget iPhone. And while Apple is playing it super safe when it comes to their design, they're also playing it safe when it comes to the iPhone 17e's display, which is set to keep the same panel at 6.1 inches, but drop the notch in favor for the dynamic island. But here's the thing, if the design is the same as the iPhone 15 and the display has the dynamic island from the iPhone 15, then it would make sense for Apple to actually be using the same display panel, right? If that's the case, then we should see a much higher brightness of 1000 nits outdoors from 800 and 2000 nits in HDR from 1200. However, another leak from the Alec claims that Apple will still be using the same display panel as before, just with this dynamic island added, and possibly also slimmer bezels, similar to what Apple did with the iPhone 17s. Although I would be surprised if Apple actually thins out the bezels, because this is a budget-oriented device. So I wouldn't be surprised if Apple actually kept the thicker bezels like we had on the iPhone 15, 16, and 16e. But then a different report as of 3 days ago from Japanese blog Makotakara stated that we won't be getting the dynamic island at all. So yeah, there's just so many contradictory reports here. My guess is that we will be getting the dynamic island just because that's been reported way more than the notch staying. However, to me, it would make the most sense if Apple actually kept the previous, more dim display that the iPhone 16e had in order to keep the costs down. Then we've got the performance changes, and this is where things are looking pretty promising. For a quick recap, with the iPhone 16 series, Apple made it very straightforward when it came to the chip. We had the A18 in the iPhone 16 and 16e, and the A18 Pro inside the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max. And the differences between these three chips were more or less the extra GPU cores. So the iPhone 16e had a 4-core GPU, the iPhone 16 had a 5-core GPU, and then the 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max had a 6-core GPU. As for the CPU performance, there wasn't a huge difference, only a few hundred points in Geekbench, something that's really not noticeable in everyday use. So for the 17e, Apple would probably adopt a similar strategy, the A19 chip, but with one less GPU core and slightly downclocked when compared to the iPhone 17 and the 17 Pro. As for RAM, this is as simple as it gets. The 16e had 8 gigs of RAM for Apple Intelligence. The regular 17 also has 8 gigs of RAM, so the 17e is pretty much guaranteed to also come with 8 gigs of RAM. Now, when it comes to the cameras, this will be a very quick conversation as well, simply because, according to the latest leaks and rumors, it is set to remain the same as on the iPhone 16e. So we'll get the same 48 megapixel camera of the 16e, which, fun fact, is actually different to the 48 megapixel camera on the iPhone 17, which is also different to the 48 megapixel camera on the iPhone 17 Pro. That's because the 16e has a much smaller sensor at only 1/2.55 inches, compared to the iPhone 17 at 1/1.56, and the 17 Pro at 1/1.28. I was hoping for Apple to at least give us the larger sensor from the iPhone 17, or at least that 18 megapixel center stage camera from the iPhone 17 series, but yeah, it looks like we won't be getting any of these. So what about any special features that the budget 17e may come with? Well, based on a report from Makotakara, we could see the brand new C1X modem from the iPhone Air, which is more efficient and faster than the C1 found inside the iPhone 16e, as well as the N1 Bluetooth and Wi-Fi chip from the iPhone 17 lineup. As for other special features, well, it seems like there's one big feature that is set to be coming to the 17e, which was missing from the 16E, and that is MagSafe. I'm still pretty surprised that Apple did not include this on the 16E because it's such a basic feature and recognizable feature for Apple. And there are so many third-party products and accessories that do take advantage of MagSafe. Well, luckily, this is finally set to be coming to the 17E. And speaking of MagSafe, what about wireless charging? Well, the 16E could only charge wirelessly at 7.5 watts, as it didn't have the magnets for alignment. So if the 17E gets the MagSafe magnets, then we should see an upgrade to 15 watts of wireless charging. As for wire charging, the 16E supported up to 29 watts, while the newer iPhone 17 supported up to 35. Even though we haven't had any reports, I would say it's safe to assume that a 17E will keep the same previous 29-watt charging speed, which was already decently fast. So what about the size of the battery? Well, we haven't had any reports on this either, so I would assume that this will remain the same as on the 16E, which is a good thing because the battery life was actually really good on the 16E with its 4005 mAh battery size. Plus, with the efficiency improvements brought by the C1X modem and the newer A19 chip, we are definitely expected to see some battery life improvements, even if the battery size remains the same. Apple quotes 26 hours of video playback for the 16E, so with these efficiency gains, I'm assuming we could see up to 29 hours on the 17E, just 1 hour less compared to the standard iPhone 17. So when is Apple planning on releasing the iPhone 17E? Well, we don't know for sure yet, but according to Mark Gurman's latest report, its launch is imminent. The iPhone 16E was announced on the 21st of February last year and was released just 1 week later on the 27th, which pretty much fits in perfectly with the next several weeks quotes for Mark Gurman. So what about its price? Well, the good news is that Apple isn't set to be increasing the price. The bad news is that they're not lowering the price either, and it is set to launch at the same $599 price point as last year, according to Mark Gurman. And here's the thing, before the iPhone 16E, we had the budget-oriented iPhone SE at $429. So the 16E saw an almost 50% price increase year over year, and that's just huge. If you've seen NQBHD's Phone of the Year awards, he actually called the 16E the flop of 2025. And that's not just Apple's flop of the year, no, he was talking about every single smartphone out there. And looking at the numbers, it also did pretty poorly in terms of sales, similar to the iPhone Air apparently, so I'm guessing less than 5% of new iPhone users opted for it. In fact, I personally haven't seen anyone using an iPhone 16e in public, but I do actually see a lot of iPhone 16s and 17 Pros every single day. So why did it fail? Well, simply put, it had too many downsides for $600. No MagSafe, no Wi-Fi 7 or even 6E, no dual cameras, no 120Hz, no ultra-wideband chip, no dynamic island, no color options, and just so much more. The 17E seems to address some of these complaints, such as adding the dynamic island or MagSafe, but is that enough to justify its price? Well, it fully depends on who this iPhone is for. And I'm thinking that whoever is looking for a $600 new iPhone, it's because they're looking for an iPhone specifically. They're not looking at anything on the Android side, like the S25 FE or the Google Pixel 10 that offers so much more for the same price. So with that being said, what other iPhone alternatives do you have for that money? Well, the iPhone 16, which is a better phone in every single way, is $620 refurbished from Apple. And then you also have the iPhone 15 Pro, which is in a whole nother league, for around $670, again, refurbished from Apple. But if you want to save money, you can have a look at a refurbished iPhone 15 for $520, or even a refurbished 16E from Amazon for only $400. So the 17E, even with all of its expected upgrades, it doesn't feel like an amazing value at that same $600 price point. It's an okay deal in a vacuum, but we don't live in a vacuum, and you've got so many more alternatives even from Apple. But yeah, what do you guys think? Would you pick up an iPhone 17e for $600 given all of these leaks rumors about its features? Let me know down below. And do subscribe because I will be covering the iPhone 17e as soon as it gets announced, which should be any moment now. And until then, check out our app wallpapers for some awesome designs for your iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or whatever. And yeah, other than that, I'm Daniel, this is Zoneoftech, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zoneoftech, signing out. Cheers.